From studying psychology in Singapore to coordinating children's programs in central Queensland, Samia's 20-year international journey showcases the global adaptability of psychology skills. And this JCU graduate is here to share how she's putting her degree into practice. Professionally Psyched is the podcast that brings you cutting-edge psychology research and real-world insights from our psych community of clinicians, researchers, and educators alike. In our special alumni spotlights, we chat to graduates from our psychology degree programs about how their skills learned in the classroom have become powerful tools supporting diverse career journeys and successes. Hi everyone and welcome to Professionally Psyched. I'm Jessica Muller, PhD candidate in Public Health at James Cook University, and before we get started we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record, and for me today that's the Bindal and Wulgurukaba peoples. And I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures from wherever you may be tuning in from across the country. In this Alumni Spotlight episode, we join Senior Lecturer Dr. Amanda Krause as she sits down with Samia Rahman, a JCU psychology graduate whose journey spans 3 continents, multiple visa challenges, and various roles in mental health and education. So grab your headphones and get ready to get professionally psyched about the global adaptability of psychology skills and the importance of following your passion. Enjoy.
Samia, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. To get started, could you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you so much for having me. So, as you mentioned, my name's Samia. I'm originally from India, but I left home when I was 17 to get my Bachelor of Psychology degree from James Cook University, but it was the Singapore campus. And I did find work after I finished the degree there. But yeah, I just, visa issues, and then I've just ended up moving around quite a bit. And I finally come to Australia. It's only taken 20 years, but I'm here.
So where in Australia are you now?
I'm in Gladstone in central Queensland.
And what prompted you to explore Singapore as a place to do university?
I knew I wanted to come to Australia eventually, so it had to be an Australian university. And Singapore had a few Australian universities. They had their offshore campuses there. And it wasn't too far from India, so my parents were okay with it. And because I'm also immunocompromised, I'm fairly immunocompromised, so they were a bit nervous about sending me too far away. So that's how we landed on Singapore to start off with, yeah.
How amazing. Can you tell me about a bit about the evolution of your career? So what happened in terms of graduating from Singapore on this journey to now in Australia?
Okay, so finished university in Singapore. I did end up getting a job as a teacher, to help in the special education department. But Singapore was dealing with overpopulation at the time, so they were really cracking down on visas, and I didn't get it. And I had to move back home. But I was very blessed because my aunt, who lives in the UK, she was living by herself, and she actually struggles with schizoaffective disorder. And my uncle was on a locum position at the time, and they were very nice. And they basically offered to pay for my master's and accommodation and everything. So they said, we'll pay for your master's degree if you just want to come live with your auntie so she's not alone. And I was like, I'll definitely do that. So I ended up moving to the UK, and I was there for a year, but as luck would have it, they had a change in their visa rules as well, and I just couldn't stay back after I finished my degree. So I had to go back to India. In India, I was working as an assistant to a psychiatrist. So that was actually my first role in the field of mental health. And it was a really great experience. I was the first point of contact for all the patients and the caregivers, and I would basically take histories. And then that's what I did for 2 years, but my health was deteriorating and I knew I had to get out. So I was able to migrate to Canada. And then Canada was quite a struggle in terms of finding work in mental health. And I tried to look for work in mental health for a really long time. I was working in leadership in retail, and I was doing like online customer service and that kind of stuff. And then I started moving up the ladder in, retail and in what I was doing. But that was also when I realized that this was not what I wanted to do. And I really wanted to, come back into mental health. And I applied for a doctorate in clinical psychology in Canada itself. And I actually got in, which was really great because I was really worried. I had this 6-year gap, but because they still weren't accredited and they didn't have enough funding, I would have had to take out a really big student loan. And I had only just finished paying off my first student loan, and I didn't want to go down that road again. So after a lot of thought, I actually declined.
Mm.
And then my own mental health took a toll because I was very upset. And I was like, well, I'm getting nowhere. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a break. I always wanted to go to Australia. I'm going to go do that working holiday visa. And I moved here. And fate would have it that I met my now husband in the first month that I was here. And then I just stayed back. And I did end up getting offered a role as a provisional psychologist. And I applied to Opera, but unfortunately, because of all the technicalities, they wanted me to do a 1-year master's again, because the master's I didn't have a placement component to it. And, like I don't have that kind of money right now, and I'd be an international student, and it was just too expensive. So I had to decline that too. But I started working in outside school hours care as inclusion support staff for children with additional needs. And then I've just, gone up. I became a responsible person, and then I've been a coordinator since November of last year.
Wow, you've had such an international journey with so many challenges. What kept you going? Because you've come so far and done so many things and had so many hurdles. What is your secret to your success?
Honestly, I think I was just lucky because I've always known this is what I wanted to do since I was in grade 9. So when I was first diagnosed with my autoimmune condition, I remember at the time, all anyone ever cared about was my physical health. And they would only ever ask about my physical health, but no one really thought to ask how it was impacting me mentally. And at that time, it was still very stigmatized when
Mm.
it was still I don't know, it was very stereotypical back then. And it just drove me. And I was like, I want to make a change. Like, this needs to change. And I just always knew mental health was what I wanted to do. Like, this is where I wanted to make a difference, even if it was to one person. Like, this is what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I love that drive that just really shines through when you're speaking. I wondered if you might be able to reflect back to your JCU Singapore days and think about the skills or knowledge that you might have learned through that degree that really comes into play in your current role now.
Absolutely. I think the Bachelor of Psychology degree that we have at JCU, it is very, I don't know if comprehensive is the right word, but it covers a lot of areas, which is really, really helpful because we had everything. We started off with anthropology, sociology. We had, we moved into like development across the lifespan. There was forensic psychology. We had some biological aspects to some of the modules as well. And I remember I knew what I wanted to do. I always wanted to do clinical psychology. I know you tend to hear a lot of people saying they thought that was the only branch of psychology. And then when they started studying and discovering, they realized there's so many more options. There's so much more you can do with psychology. But for me, it was always clinical. I always wanted to go down that stream. And so I knew what I wanted to focus on. But it definitely helped having all of the other modules as well, because if I hadn't had youth and adolescence or lifespan development across the lifespan, I think I may not have had such a good understanding of how to deal with young children as I do right now. Had I not had, the biological aspects of our modules or the clinical aspects of it, I probably wouldn't know how to strategize dealing with children with, behaviors, because every child is different. Like in psychology, we know like there's no one size fits all. We know that. So even if they have the same diagnosis, they're not going to have the same approaches. You're going to have to use different tools and resources and methods to get through to them. So I think that was a big help as well. We had forensic psychology, which was really interesting, but for some reason I was really bad at it. Um, I don't know what it was, but yeah, I was just really, really bad at forensic psych. And I was always interested in it. So it's just a career path that was never an option for me.
I'm sure you weren't bad at it, but I think what it hopefully helped you with is based on what you were saying before, right? We don't always know all of the different pathways that we can take with this degree. Do you have any advice for students who maybe aren't certain or maybe learn that what they thought they were interested in maybe isn't what they're good at or feel inclined to pursue?
So just speaking from personal experience, I would definitely say do not ignore your gut feeling. If you find yourself more inclined towards certain subjects, like you enjoy it, or like you look forward to those classes, there's definitely something there that you want to build on, because in life you want to be happy doing what you do. It consumes a very huge part of your day, like your job does. So if you're miserable in it, you're miserable, the people around you are miserable, and it doesn't help anyone. And if anything, I feel like it's going to negate the whole point of studying mental health. Uh, so
Certainly.
I know we're still discovering ourselves when we're in university, and we're still exploring and we're still learning who we are and what we like and what we don't like. And we're always changing, right? Like you said, we're always evolving. We could have liked something yesterday, don't like it tomorrow. There's like so many like psychosocial factors involved. But honestly, for me, it was just going with the flow, figuring out what subjects I liked, what subjects I was good at. And I struggled with stats, and I still hate statistics. And I know I would never want a role that would involve any of that again. Oh my gosh, SPSS was my nightmare. But I really enjoyed like the people facing roles and the subjects. So I knew I wanted to do something that was people facing. I knew I wasn't going to be sitting behind a computer for 8 hours a day. Like it had to be that allowed me to interact with people. And I did always want to work with children. I don't know. I feel like it's important for us to start out young, to recognize behaviors and to recognize triggers and be able to address them, and, to come up with strategies for the children and for their caregivers, like their guardians, parents, teachers, everyone else in their life. So, they have like support from a really young age. I think that makes a huge difference.
I agree. And speaking of sort of day to day with children, what does your day to day job look like these days?
Does it make me want to reconsider having children myself? Maybe. I'm not sure. Um, but no, because it's outside school hours care, so it's about 3 to 4 hours in the morning, like so 6 to 10, and then about 3 to 4 hours in the afternoon, so about 2 to 6 o'clock. As a coordinator, I spend 6.5 of those hours in session with the children, and I have an hour of admin time, for other stuff. But during session, it basically involves supervising, honestly, making sure everything's running smoothly, everyone is safe, your team members feel supported. It's a very great program. Like you have curriculums that you come up with, and you curate programs for every week. There's all kinds of different activities. And for the company that I work for, they actually have this great adventure box that allows you to choose from categories and different types of activities. And there's always something in there that you can choose from that caters to like different ages, like obviously if it's something easy, you're not going to ask a grade sixer to do it because you're going to be bored in 5 seconds. It's very diverse. And then we also have the opportunity to come up with our own ideas. We have a reflection journal, which is completed by children, parents, school staff, the other educators. There's feedback, there's reflecting on the activities we've done, on, the food that we've eaten. And, you're just coming up with more ideas and building on what you have, which is really great. So the kids are getting what they want to do as well, but we're ensuring that it's obviously safe.
I know that you said you weren't a fan of SPSS, which I can understand, but it sounds like you still might be using some research skills in navigating the children's feedback in order to create this really great programming.
Yes, I think input from the children and the educators is really vital to ensuring you have a program that keeps them engaged. You don't want to have something on your program that they're not interested in. And then there's the STEM bit of it. There's STEM learning that we always have. So we do different experiments. So I think it was last week or the week before that, it was Rare Diseases Day, because we're also definitely trying to teach children through these activities, like it's intentional and there's purpose behind it. So we did this experiment with bread, and we had 2 slices of bread, and children touched everything in the room, came back and touched the bread, and then they washed their hands, and then they touched the other slice of bread. And then we've just pinned it up to see which one is going to get moldy first. I mean, we're expecting the one that we touched with dirty hands to, spoil first, but it was just teaching them about the importance of hand washing and germs and microbes. So it's really, really fun when you get to engage in, these activities with them.
Yeah, certainly. And a little bit of the scientific method coming through there. So I love that. And what a great way to end our conversation today, in that we do learn these things through school, and we have to remember how to interact with children, and we can apply that into our own lives as well as our working lives. So Samia, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Professionally Psyched. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the ongoing support of our psych community. If you'd like to show your support, or if you want us to cover anything on the pod, reach out via our emails, and don't forget you can listen to full episodes on Spotify.